Welcome to our webinar. Today we have Colleen Roosevelt to present teaching about sustainability and environment for German class. And this is the number six guest speaker webinar in our 2024 for NDE, NILA, and CLTA Special Interest Group K-12 guest speaker series. And now let's have Colleen introduce herself.
Hi, I'm Colleen Roosevelt. I am a German teacher in Lincoln Public Schools. I teach in middle school and the high school, all of the levels of German, which is pretty great. And one of my favorite units is sustainability and the environment. So we can get into that part. This presentation is in 3 chunks. What are the goals for students when we talk about sustainability and the environment? Where are resources found? Of what can you use, and then examples of student work. What are we asking them to do? We have these goals. What does that look like translated into what students can do? So here's a list of all of the objectives that we have for students of knowing more phrases regarding environmentalism and ecology, pieces of those vocabulary that they would need to talk about the environment and ecology have already happened in previous units that we've had. For us, this is a 3rd and 4th year unit. So they've had previous exposure to some of the vocabulary, just not in this context. We'll look at German recycling habits, particularly looking at Pfand, as well as the different ways that they recycle in bins, which is something we've mentioned in previous courses in German, but it will come up again. Students are able to describe and categorize various energy resources, such as what is considered green technology, what is considered a fossil fuel, and how do those work. And I'll show you some examples of how students describe that, which are enjoyable later. Students will be able to compare information from infographics, and I'll have examples of what those look like. They're really well set up for comparisons. I'm able to make connections between causes and effects through infographics. You do need the right kind of infographic to make that work, and it's useful to talk to kids about that. They'll know the basics of global currents. That is one of the areas that we have for ecology. They can describe what individuals and the government can do to support living greener. So they can think about their own actions. How does that relate to the environment and the effects on it, as well as what can larger systems do to affect the environment positively or negatively. They can describe causes and effects of environmental problems, the actions that individuals or governments could undertake. They can identify the main idea of an article. This particular unit does have a fair amount of reading in it, and so if students can get main idea and some details, that's useful. They can describe at least one method of handling plastic waste, which is one of the larger waste components that we have that is affecting the environment. So describing at least one thing you can do about it, and then give a few solutions to various problems. So there's a lot of various things on here. A lot of it is focusing on students being able to describe and then giving a possible action step. This unit can be very depressing for some students as they see a lot of just gloom and doom and the world's terrible and there's pollution everywhere. And so having pieces where students have to focus on what can they actually do. So it is not hopeless. There are actions people can do, and there are things larger groups can do that they can advocate for if they're interested to be able to help solve these problems. So resources. Here are a couple of my favorites. The first two, Our World in Data and Statista, are really great for graphs, getting charts. Statista, the link that I have on there is specifically in German. They do have English resources. Our World in Data, I really, really enjoy. I'm going to show that off. You can put in whatever you're interested in. I will put in like, let's see, green energy production. Let's see. Plastic waste. No, we don't have anything for that one. Where are there different mines? Let's do sun energy, solar. Renewable energy. Okay. So we have different renewable energy. This shows how much over time that different groups are using renewable resources. So you can compare across the whole world over time, specific years that you want this to be. You can adjust the maps to zoom in on specific areas. So if you want to look just at Europe, you can zoom in and see more specific areas and see specific countries. So it allows you to adjust it, which is really great. If you want a table and you would like to adjust it, so it's just showing specific areas, you can add or subtract different countries that you specifically want to have. So if you're wanting students to compare the country that they live in to a country from the target language, you can do that, which is really lovely. And it makes it a little easier for them to see of, here's when we first started recording information, here's where we currently are in this year, what is the general change that has happened so far. So Our World in Data is a relatively new source, but all of their stuff is free, and it's very interactive for students to be able to use. And then Statista is also set up with different graphics and graphs. It has less for people to manipulate themselves, but it will also have a paragraph of explanation attached to it to describe what this chart is illustrating. So you can give it to students either just the chart for them to look at, or you can give them the paragraph as well, and they can see how well this is represented in the graphic that you have. For videos about this, I love using Kurzgesagt. They are a small informative video company. They were bought by ZDF, so ZDF. And so they have a whole bunch of videos now that are available on ZDF that you can go and you can watch. They all have captions on them. I highlighted the section. They have a lot of information about atomkraft, so nuclear energy. And they have a series that you can do of what is it? What are arguments for nuclear energy and what are arguments against it that are all very, very short. And it's designed to be more digestible for the general viewer. There's Deutsche Welle, which I use for a lot of news. And then for daily life, I like Yuan Ni and Liam Carpenter. Both of them are actually immigrants to Germany. Yuan is from Vietnam. Liam is from England. And so they make a lot of comparisons of what was different for them in Germany compared to their home country. And they have several videos about Pfand particularly, which is the bottle return system that they have in Germany. So almost 99% of bottles are returned to their manufacturer in Germany and then cleaned and refilled, instead of the American system where they get recycled, melted down, and turned into something else. So it's less plastic waste in those areas. So here are some of the resources that I like. I like using infographics. Sarah Elizabeth Cottrell, she does a lot of writing about comprehensible input. And so I'm summarizing what she said because she is very eloquent. Is a support for comprehensible input because there's a low barrier for understanding. There's a lot of pictures helping describe what this information is about. It makes for easy comparisons, such as with this chart that I have on here, which is from 2015. You can compare the different energies together. You can do all of the green energies compared to fossil fuel and nuclear energies. Across different infographics, you can also bring it up to students. Sometimes nuclear power is put with other energies, and sometimes it is put with green energy, and it depends on the bias of the person who put the chart together. It gives data to support some of the higher order thinking, so a launch point for why questions. Why do they have more of this particular type of energy than another? Such as Austria has a lot more water energy. That's because they're more in the mountains, so there's just more rivers with water running downhill, so they can capture that energy more so than places that have more stagnant water, like a lake that doesn't move quite as quickly as a river does. Some infographics that I use. I enjoy this one from BMUB, which was a survey of how much energy are different things in your house using. I use this with a lot of students of just giving them pictures and a couple of words that they might recognize to be able to compare where energy is being used. A lot of them are surprised by cooking and how much light takes. So they can work on being able to use comparisons. I'm talking about percentages, and having the word durchschnittlich, which is new for them in this unit. This is a new graphic I'm excited about using this year about Balkonkraftwerk. This one is to tie into students of what happened in like 2021 and 2022, because the big push for Germany getting more solar panels was the war in Ukraine. They ended up having their gas cut off from Russia and they needed an alternate source of energy. And so there are thousands of little solar panels that people are attaching to their balconies to sort of supplement the energy that they no longer have from gas. So this is one of the examples, and I love that this is a newer one, and this is from Statista. This is technically an infographic, but it has enough text on it. I use it as a reading. I have students go through and they're highlighting or underlining, depending on what items they have at hand. What are the suggestions being made? I believe there's 14 or 15 in here, and their goal is to find 10 that they understand and can tell me what it means. So they'll underline them, mark what they're understanding, and then I go through, I check with everyone. We'll go over the ones that they may have missed because they didn't recognize the vocabulary. And then we practice rewriting these suggestions as commands. So what can you do while shopping to reduce your impact in your apartment while you're on like moving around, bathroom with presents, and then in the kitchen, which again surprises a lot of students how much energy is used in cooking. So when we get into student tasks, they're looking at what are those challenges and what can individuals, groups, or governments do? And again, the challenge for teachers is talking about those challenges without catastrophizing. I really enjoy this. This is a quote from, she's at Shell Bizzle on YouTube. Do your best and advocate for the rest. She's a sustainability expert from Texas, and looking at what are actions that students can reasonably take. They don't have as much generally money or power to be able to do things in the same way that adults can, but what can they do with their choices, as well as who they choose to talk to and like how they choose to use their voice that they have. So this is one of the resources I have for students. We listened to this music video, which is about a lot of problems in the world and how they intend to solve them with pizza. And so it's a lighthearted way to talk about a lot of the different problems, and they find the music video generally engaging. It does have strobe lights in it, so I don't particularly want to play it just in case someone would like to skip that part. But the link is in there, and then this is the worksheet that I have students do. They have the full set of text and some vocabulary that they might not be familiar with. And then they're answering, what are the problems that are mentioned in this text? What's the solution that they give? Why do the singers say this is a cross-cultural solution? Because everyone has something that is basically bread with sauce on top. It might not be made of wheat, but you know, it's there. How could this help someone going through trial or prison in which they use pizza to throw at people? And then comparing the video and the text to see if they're similar. And then this is the most useful part. What are 10 words from this text you can use in your writing for this particular unit? They have phrases like judgment, prison, rocks, believing, saving things, like ordering stuff, what you can believe in, proving, having peace, war, borders, all sorts of different stuff that they might find interesting for whichever problem they choose to talk about. I cannot see my little bar on the side. Can I move this? Yes, I can. Okay. Oh, no, we're not going to play it. It's going to start strobing. Okay. The next reading I have, this was an article in Biology Today. It was in a scientific newspaper or a scientific article, and it got reported on in several different outlets. And so there's several different German outlets that reported on it. I'm sure it's available in other languages because it was an Italian person who made this discovery. This is Die große Raupe Nimmersatt, which is the Very Hungry Large Caterpillar, which is similar to the Eric Carle book. So it's a play on those words. And it is about wax moths that were found in a beehive eating beeswax, who were put into a plastic bag and ate their way out of the bag. And they do an experiment where they actually find they can eat and digest plastic. And so that's really, like, a lot of my students found it a very hopeful thing of there are ways to process the plastic that we're going through, and we can do something with it. It does address in the article, which I'm very glad of, more moths is not necessarily the answer. We're not just going to dump them all in the ocean. They recommend having less plastic, and then the chemists are working on synthesizing the enzyme that the moths make to be able to use that to hopefully break down plastic into a different material that is hopefully less polluting. A lot of students like this one because it talks about squishing bugs and seeing what happens, as well as it goes over vocabulary for scientific experiments. So if they're interested in science, that can be very helpful of having some of that background. This next part, I have the book with me. If it will show up, yes, it will. Simple German explanations is a task I do for most of the things we learn about in this unit. It is based on this book, which is in English, The Thing Explainer. It's by Randall Munroe. He worked for NASA for a couple of years, and then he now works as a cartoonist on the website XKCD. But he still really loves education and explaining things to people of how different processes work. And so he went through a bunch of different scientific and academic things and explained them only using 1,000-word vocabulary. This is similar to simple English on Wikipedia. And so this is what I give my students as we're going through a lot of scientific vocabulary and a lot of really big ideas. I do not anticipate that they will remember all of this specific German jargon. I do want them to be able to explain it to a little kid. So the English example I have on here, how does wind energy work? A big fan is going to catch the wind, and that makes it spin. The turbine spins, and that makes electricity in a generator. Excuse me. That will make electricity in a generator. So for the German example, this one I have about fossil fuels. Fossil fuels. They were once dinosaurs and plants. They are dead. Now, after many years, it's an energy source, like oil, natural gas, or coal. So of having it in a very simple form for students, and we practice this a lot, as well as the explanations that I give them as we're presenting stuff. We'll also use this vocabulary. I give them what the German vocabulary, like jargon for these specific things is, but it is not as valuable as them understanding it and being able to explain it to someone else. So here's some examples of what my students write. I give them a couple of the words that they're going to need. And when talking about power plants, most of them, except solar, work pretty much the same way, which is pretty great. So when we have nuclear energy, we have Kernenergie. Wir spalten die Kerne Uran. So we split uranium pieces. Es ist heiß. It is hot. Wasser wird heiß. The water is hot. Wasser geht in die Luft und es dämpft. So the water is going in the air, it's steamy. Wasser dreht eine Turbine. This water spins a turbine. That makes electricity. Das macht Strom. When we get into a coal power plant, you burn coal, that makes hot water. The water goes into the air and it spins a turbine. And that energy makes electricity. And then for water energy, you just don't have to burn anything. There's a turbine in water. And the water from the river spins the turbine. It makes energy. And then you miss the part, and it goes into a generator to make that electricity. So they have a lot of ideas of how to simplify it, of here are the main things that are going to happen. They don't always remember the idea of like, it's steaming, or like the water's really, really hot. They get that concept and they're able to use that to describe what's going on. With some of the other things that we're looking at, we learn about how global currents work as part of ecology. They get to pick what they think is the biggest problem that is going in the world. I don't necessarily care which one they pick as long as they talk about it and give suggestions. And then they have ideas of what can you do about climate and what could other people such as the government do. It's like, I can turn off my lights. I can eat less meat. I can take shorter showers. I can drive a smaller car. For the government, they can turn off the electricity, which feels a bit extreme. They can get trash out of the oceans. They can build more green energy things. And they can tax fossil fuels, were the suggestions from this particular student. A lot of them will come up, usually one or two that are kind of silly ideas, and then a couple that would actually be serious. Here's another way that I have them do simple explanations is they are put into groups and they make posters. So this is explaining what is the greenhouse gas effect, which they have it written up here. It makes the planet hot because the bad gases, so the bad gases, the ones you don't want, fumes, are going into the atmosphere and they get caught and it makes everything hot. Their idea for a solution, plant trees, because trees eat CO2 and they breathe out oxygen. We read a bit about Greta Thunberg as someone who is similar in age to them of what are they doing in Norway and what is she doing in Norway along with her colleagues or peers. A little bit about Fridays for the Future. And then, excuse me, my MVP, which is the fun system, which students think is fascinating, that you can just bring your bottles back to the store and get paid for it. And it is a system that Coca-Cola already does in Europe and doesn't do in the United States, which I really love for them to be able to talk about that and just talk about why would it work in Europe but not in the United States and what are their ideas for change. As I start getting ideas of how could things that maybe work in other countries possibly happen in the US, or what are ideas that we could do, there's this program called Project Sunroof from Google. You can put in a location and it tells you how much sunlight that you get based on how many trees are in your area. They're looking off of the Google Map data. This is my school. And so it shows how much space is there available based on it's like the top of a building, how much is blocked by trees. So this is how much light you have and how much money that would roughly be worth. I present this to my students, and this is all information that's in English, but they can give them ideas of, okay, we're going to write a short letter. It's like maybe a paragraph to either the school. You can write it to the city hall or legislature. I give them the names of who those people are so they can get a little more familiarity of who actually works for the city, who are people who can change things if they are interested in contacting them for other stuff. And they write up in German of they have to do their little introduction paragraph of, hi, I'm this person. I live in this area, because that helps when you're talking to politicians so they know who you are and why your voice should matter. And then what it is that they think is a good or a bad thing. So they can write for or against any of the ideas that I have for them to work, because I mostly want them to use vocabulary. If they disagree with the prompt, that's great. Tell me why, of giving me reasons of why they are for or against different proposals. So they get to write why they think this might be a good idea or why it might be a bad idea and suggestions for that of, is it worth the savings? Are there any downsides that they particularly see to this? And be able to give their feedback, which is really lovely. The final piece that we have for this particular unit is an essay. They just have to pick what they think is a problem in the world, which is a pretty broad topic. On the first day, they're given an outline, which I'll show on the next slide. And they have to pick their topic and find 2 sources that are related to that topic that they will read and do like 1 or 2 things they want to pull out of there. They could be any of the assignments we've had in class. It could also be something else that they want to look up. If they have a passion project that we have not touched on in class yet because we didn't have time or it just didn't quite fit in with the vocabulary we already know, they can look stuff up and use that. I don't care what language it is that they are getting their sources in, but they write down their source information and what are their main points in the target language. That first day, they have their outline, unlimited computer usage to fill out their outline. The rest of the week, they do not have their computers or outside help. So if they know they're going to be using a particular word over and over, they can look it up ahead of time. After that, they have to go through me if they want to add any new words into their writing. So for their outline, they have to have an introduction, which is addressing what is your problem? What might it be caused by? And what can people do anything about it? And that is their introduction. We have 3 paragraphs. The first one is describing the problem and what has caused it. This is a great time to use some sources. So they might put in a source that explains what it possibly could be from. And then they get to use this word laut, which is according to WebMD, whichever one they're wanting to do, according to Deutsche Welle, according to a particular group that is giving information, this is happening. Their second paragraph, what are the current effects of this issue? Other sources that might be attached to that. If it is not managed, what effects could continue, like how could it get worse? If we don't do this, then this is going to happen. Or if we continue to do this, this might happen. So talking about cause and effect. Their final paragraph, what can be done about this? So we've talked about where it came from, what's happening. Can we do something about it? They do have to come up with at least 4 suggestions for either individuals or for larger groups to do, and what those can actually do to help affect things. They can pull up suggestions of what other places have done. If there's another government that they're familiar with that has done stuff, if there's an action group that they are familiar with, they can talk about it. If any have come up in class, they can bring those up. Zum Beispiel is the phrase for example. I give that to them because it usually comes up when they want to use that. And then their conclusion is 1 to 3 sentences of generally restating their problem and summarizing what people can do about it. And I give them 2 little phrases for closing of zum Schluss oder kurz gesagt, so they can feel fancy in their writing. As a part of this, I have this reminder on their outline. You are a level 16 or 17 human because most of these are my juniors or seniors. And they're a level 11 English writer, which is fantastic. In my German class, they've had 4 years, so it is not going to match. Their abilities in German are not going to be as awesome as their English abilities, and that is okay because they are learners. I do not expect them to give me a beautiful, like 5-page essay because their German isn't there yet. If it does come out to 5 pages, I will doubt its authenticity. So I want to make sure that they outline their ideas and they show me they put in the work. Generally, they need about 2 days to write those like 30-ish sentences of having their introduction, conclusion, and the 3 body paragraphs. And so I have a checklist for them after they've done their outline, they've written it up, making sure it's appropriate. They have problem, effects, causes, their suggestions, sources. They only work on this in class because I have issues with online cheating. So all of it is done by hand. They turn in their paper at the end of every class. It stays with me. Because it stays with me, I can go through and see how much progress they've made, and I can give them feedback on their rough draft. So I don't have to grade all of them at once at the very end. I give them feedback as they're going along of what they've turned in each day. Usually they need 2 days to write their rough draft. Sometimes I give them a third. After that 3rd day, 2nd or 3rd day with the rough draft, I will go through and make sure they have all of the possible edits that they can from me, and they will make a final draft. So this is a presentational item. It is expected to go through a draft phase, getting feedback and polishing before they turn it in. They're expected to know and understand all the vocabulary they use in their essay. So they could have their outline where they wrote down words they thought they were going to use. If there are words on there that I am suspicious of, I will ask them what they mean out of context. And they should know what their words mean if they brought in new vocabulary. That is the main big essay that I have in there. So, oops. Yeah. So that generally gets it so our students can know more of these phrases about environmentalism and ecology, describing different sources, making connections between causes and effects, talking about what individuals and governments can do and what are those causes and effects in there, and describing possible solutions. So that's ideas I have for German and sustainability. Yeah. Do you have any questions, concerns?
This is great. You have great ideas. Thank you, Colleen. Many
Welcome.
resources, a lot of useful resources and great ideas. I like the way you plan it out, like students write in class and have a structure for them to follow through. This is really important. Sometimes it's not about, they might have ideas, but they don't know how to organize the structure. And if we don't have, it laid out for them, some students just, give up. Oh, I'm done. It's like, yeah. This
Yeah,
is
for
really
students
great.
who struggle to plan, you can assign them if you need to do your introduction and your first paragraph today. Okay, we'll be on day 2, you need to write your second paragraph. And it has a recommended number of sentences. By the time we're in level 4, they are starting to do these more complex sentences of having like subordinating clauses, relative clauses. I generally count each clause as a separate sentence. So if they're going for a number, they don't give me a whole bunch of little tiny short sentences to get 10 sentences. They're showing off their abilities.
Great. Thank you. 关老师, do you have any questions?
This is very great very resourceful presentation. When I tried the website, Our World in Data, I didn't find too many resources about Chinese culture. So I'm wondering, for the resources you provided, Our World in Data. So you mean we can only find the data about the graphs and charts?
Yes, it is mostly graphs and charts. It is based in the United States, and it depends on what data they have access to.
Oh, that's why I cannot find too much resources about Chinese culture. Okay, but great. I will find more graphs maybe based on the US, and so I can compare the data with the Chinese culture.
That would be awesome.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Any other questions? If no, I think we're good. What do you think, Colleen?
Yeah, thanks everybody for coming. If you have questions, I'm at kroseba. Oops, not what I wanted to click. kroseba at lps.org. So if you search my name on LPS, it'll show up.
Yeah. And also, if you want to find Colleen, if you find me, you can find her. We are friends. Yeah. Thank you very much for the great session. I really appreciate it. It's a very hard topic. Sometimes it's like too serious, and we hesitate to discuss about sustainability and environment. But this is great. Yeah. Thank you. Thank you, Colleen, and thanks to everybody to participate. And let's call it a day. Have a good night. Thank you. Bye.
Yeah.